Good evening and welcome to the Cancer Education Series, brought to you by MercyOne and Above and Beyond Cancer. My name is Chris Gooddale. I'm the Executive Director of Above and Beyond Cancer, and it is my weekly pleasure to introduce our founder, which is a special thing to be today. I'll explain that in a minute, Dr. Richard Deming. Dr. Deming?
Hey, Chris, thanks so much. Yes, it is a special day for a couple of reasons. One, we are inching our way back to normality. So for the last year, we've been doing this cancer education series just as virtual Zoom. Well, tonight, we are doing it both Zoom, virtual, and in person. So I'm here at the MercyOne Health and Fitness Center, and we've got some live guests here that are watching along with us. And after our presentation, we're going to have our first in-person spin class since last March. So that's pretty exciting. The second reason that today is kind of an exciting day is it is Founders Day for Above and Beyond Cancer. 10 years ago today, Above and Beyond Cancer left to traipse up through the Himalayas on our way up to Everest Base Camp. So that was 10 years ago today. And so this marks Founders Day for Above and Beyond Cancer. And we have a very special guest for tonight. I want to introduce you to Beth Shelton. Beth is from Des Moines. She went to Saydale High School. She went to Simpson for her undergrad degree and then got her master's degree at Drake. She is currently the CEO of Girl Scouts of Greater Iowa. And her topic is really appropriate, not only for people who've gone through or are going through cancer, but for anyone who experiences a bump in the road of life. And guess what? That includes all of us. And Beth is going to talk about her journey, and the title of her talk is, If You're Given Lemons, Make Lemonade. I'll turn it over to you, Beth. Thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Deming. I've had just, such a distinct honor of speaking at a few of the same events as Dr. Deming, and I could not be more thrilled to be here tonight. So thank you for the invitation. I just want to go ahead and jump right in, and as such, I will go ahead and share my screen. We'll maybe chat here for about 30 minutes or so, and we will then open it up for more of a Q&A, a little more interactive, but rest assured, I will do my best to keep it engaging as we go along. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a moment, please. Okay, Dr. Deming or Chris Goodale, could either one of you confirm that you can see my screen okay?
Looks great.
Okay, so here we go, off and running. First of all, I am whoops, let's see if we can, there we go. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how difficult the past year has been. It, without question, has been the hardest year I have ever endured, personally and professionally. And so much of that, of course, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the things that came with that. I know so many people affiliated with Above and Beyond Cancer certainly have hardships that are far beyond what I can imagine. And so first of all, my heart goes out to you. I wanted to start with a quote, something that really resonated with me this year. And I'm trying to encompass every single day right now. And it's this: what I regret most in my life are failures of kindness. Those moments when another human being was there in front of me, suffering, and I responded sensibly, reservedly, mildly. And I try to use that as a reminder because we never know what someone else is going through. And I'm sure we've all had days where we think we cannot endure one more thing. And this quote just feels like it encompasses so much of what so many of us feel. And I just think it's a good reminder to know that you're not alone. I'm not alone. None of us are alone in feeling like things are just really hard, have been hard. Hopefully, light at the end of the tunnel in terms of COVID-19 and interacting with others. What an amazing night to get to be here speaking to you, not only Founders Day, but getting to be back in person, some of you, and having spin class. Just what a celebration. I cannot imagine how bucket filling that will be for all of you that are choosing to engage with that. Now, good news is some of you I know tonight, we're not Girl Scouts, no problem. I only have one slide that really talks about Girl Scouts, and it's this one. And the reason I think it's important is because it helps maybe set the context of some of what I'm going to talk about tonight, which is, yes, hardship, resilience, adversity, grit, but also a little bit of culture and how I think about people, how I think about leading people. And I think context is important there. So I am the CEO of Girl Scouts of Greater Iowa and have been just celebrating my 5th anniversary, which it just seems like it's gone so fast. So for context, Girl Scouts is a federated nonprofit. Why that's important tonight is because some of what I talk about with culture and innovation and what we're doing, it's very specific to Girl Scouts of Greater Iowa. So there's a lot of amazing things happening across the country, but with a federated nonprofit, like Girl Scouts, we are 100% locally governed and 100% locally funded. So I have a lot of autonomy as a leader. Everything from software to HR to infrastructure to camps, it happens. Those decisions happen locally. For context, we serve the western 70 counties of the state. So the western 2/3, that colored portion there. We've got 52 full-time employees and about another 70 seasonal employees with camp. We've got 4 offices around the state and an additional 4 camps around the state. So we manage or oversee about 1,000 acres of property. And now this year, about 72 buildings, and our overall, gross revenue in terms of budget is about $10 million. So sometimes I get 2 questions at almost every speaking engagement. Number one is, did you bring cookies for us? Since I'm virtual tonight, clearly, I did not. So that question comes up a lot. And sometimes I get the question, is that a full-time job working for Girl Scouts? So I hope you can see, not only do we have a lot of autonomy and do a lot of innovative things, indeed, it's a full-time job. It's a fun job. It's an engaging job. It's also, often really stressful. Now, before I jump into the next topic, I just want to say, I always think, my personality is I want to know people. I want to connect with people. And so I always think, let's level set here. Look, let's spend 1 or 2 minutes getting to know who Beth is. Who are you hearing from tonight? Why am I here? And maybe what shaped my life, right? So we all get lemons. So my theme tonight is sort of lemons. And in fact, making lemonades about, with them, which is in fact a Girl Scout cookie, a very delicious Girl Scout cookie. So, one of the lemons I got in life, if you want to get to know me a little bit, is that I was born with just one hand. And so I use the term amputee because I'm in some amputee groups, but really it's a limb difference, somebody who is missing a limb. And it just turns out pure happenstance, right? That my greatest love in life at age 5 became athletics. And partly because of the people who showed up for me. I had an older brother. He was 2 years older. He loved sports. And my mom, enrolled me in Little League. Here we are on the far left. And I just like to tell this story because I think it's so pivotal in what shaped me today to be part of who I am in terms of finding the silver lining in situations that are not always what we would pick and maybe not always ideal. So I showed up to the first day of practice. I grew up in we had no extra income to speak of, a single parent family, and missing a limb as well. And I had a great coach. His name was Mark Singer, and he said, "Okay, kid, no problem. Let's figure this out." And gosh, I think now today how much his advice when I was 5 years old translates to how I lead today. I mean, truly, 38, almost 40 years later, which is, that being the case, how shall I proceed, right? We have to deal with what we have to deal with. Turns out I was the only kid in our little league that had one hand. Okay, didn't have any equipment, didn't have a glove, didn't have baseball pants. And fast forward 40 years later, I'm leading an organization through a pandemic and trying to figure really hard things out. Okay, that being the case, how shall I proceed? And I think he kind of taught me that at age 5, which was remarkable. He went home that night. He found an extra glove in his garage, and he rigged it up with some wires and some Velcro. And he said, "Here you go, kid, let's give it a try." I will say, probably my early love of athletics came in part not only due to Coach Sanger, But I did get an unassisted triple play that first year. So, I mean, that probably helped cement my love for sports. So, much to the chagrin of my mom, she wanted me to be a ballerina and that's what she loved. And that just didn't float my boat, right? So just so you know, like a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is framed in the context of people who showed up for me, who helped me fulfill my dreams, and who accepted me for who I was and what I could do, or what I couldn't even imagine I could do. Now, of all the things in life I could have chosen, there's probably things that required less dexterity than athletics that I probably should have chosen. Maybe maybe being a ballerina, maybe choir, and maybe soccer, things where having two hands wasn't that important. But I don't know. I guess I chose to take the road that would lead me to the most resilience, is how I like to say it today, which is to pick the things that took a lot, two hands. So here we are. Now, here's what I want to say. I loved sports so much because of the moments, the synergy, the grit, the resilience, and because of coaches, right? People that showed up for me, like Coach Sanger. Now, another person that showed up for me at people, when I was in, middle school, think about like that 10, 11, 12-year-old age frame. I attended an athletic camp and I desperately did not want to go because I was very introverted and I was embarrassed. I did not like being in front of other kids. I didn't like being put on the spot to show my ability because having one hand, people would watch me and they would look at me and I didn't like any of it. So my mom and her infinite wisdom and love signed me up for a huge sports camp that summer. I say that sort of in jest, but truly it changed my life. And that really showed a lot of wisdom on her part. She signed me up for the Drake women's basketball camp. And I was probably, again, 10, 11 years old. And I was treated with so much dignity and kindness. The coaches saw me for who I was, how hard I worked, and how much I loved the game. And I became obsessed with Drake women's basketball. Coach Lisa Bluter and Coach Jan Jensen and all the players. At the time it was Lisa Brinkmeyer and Christy Kinney and Tammy Blackstone and these players. I thought they walked on water. Guess what? Today, Drake women's basketball still walks on water. Different people in those roles, but still incredible with Jenny Bronchek and the whole team there. I loved Drake women's basketball so much. I probably told 1,000 people in my life I would play basketball for Drake women. And not only that, I would slam dunk a basketball because you know what? I saw Tammy Blackstone slam dunk a basketball at that camp and I was like, hey, guess what? I get to determine my own fate. So if she can do it, I can do it. So fast forward, I was, 10, 11 years old, and now I'm a senior in high school. And I loved basketball. I loved every sport, but basketball was my favorite. There's something about that fast-paced energy and the teamwork and the love that Lisa Bluter and Jan Jensen, implemented in me at that age. And so I decided, of course, not only am I going to play basketball for Drake, but I'm going to be the MVP of my high school. Of course, I need to be, right? If we're going to play Division I basketball. Fast forward, we get to my senior year, we get to the awards banquet, and the coach is reading off the awards. Now, we had an award at my high school. It was called the Eagle Award, and it was designated for those players, those students that were really good sports, really hardworking, really optimistic. And I had gotten that award quite a few times. In fact, in multiple sports. I played 4 sports in high school. So times 4 years, right? I had years and years of Eagle Awards, trophies that sat on my shelf at home. And I wanted to be the MVP. Clearly, I needed to be the MVP. And so as we navigated that night and I listened with so much intensity, waiting for the coach to say who the most valuable player was. And he got to the final awards and he read my name, and it was for the Eagle Award again as a senior in high school. And I was distraught. I was like the least, the least accepting, the least reasonably, person that should have gotten that award because I was mad about it. I worked hard. I had one hand and I was there, every day. And not only that, but my coach played me like every minute of every game. So I went to him afterwards. I'm like, Coach, this is my future. I'm going to play for Drake. And, I'm not even the MVP. Like you never took me out of the game. And he said, Beth, you're right. I didn't take you out. You played a lot. You played every minute of every game because you know what? When you're out there, you make the team better, Beth. Like you work hard. You're the glue of this team and you are optimistic and you make the other team members better. We are better when you're out there, but you are not the best person on the team. So to his credit, I learned this lesson the really hard way when I was 18 years old, but my scoring average my senior year was 2.2 points per game. So it is true, actually, that Drake University probably did not want me to come play basketball. And I had to be really humbled along the way. So silver lining, right? Okay, that being the case, how shall I proceed? So I focused on another sport. I had one more season ahead of me, and it was tennis. It was the spring of my senior year. And I was a much better tennis player. Turns out having two hands is not quite as big a deal in the game of tennis as it is in Division I basketball, right? So playing tennis, having a great year, just killing it, number one player, working hard. And a college coach came to watch me play. And he was from Simpson College, Bob Nutgrass. He said, you know what? You're doing a good job. We'd love to have you come play, kid. Okay, here we go. And off I went to Simpson College to play tennis. And I could not have been more excited. I don't have time tonight to go into all the nuances of the things that happened and how it unfolded, but I can tell you, I felt like I was a pretty big deal. And I told a lot of people, hey, guess what? I'm going to play college tennis. I worked hard, here I am. And I know a lot of people thought that was a big deal. When I showed up my freshman year for college tennis, we moved in to the school 2 weeks early because the women's tennis program played in the fall. We had 5 players on the court. Now, for reference, varsity college tennis needs 6 players. We had 5. So I sort of had that humbling over again, right? Like, I'm a big deal. I'm going to go play college tennis. And I show up and I had that moment of like, they might have only wanted me to come play because they did not have enough people. Like, they literally needed warm bodies. We had to recruit the team manager, who was a senior at the college to get like degrees in sports administration, to put a uniform on and be our number 6 player. Like, that is the state that we were in my freshman year. But you know what? That being the case, how shall I proceed? And I decided I'm going to kill it. I worked hard all summer and I'm going to come in here and work hard. And I did. I spent 4 years doing my very best. And I always heard my high school basketball coach's voice in my head saying, your value on the team is making the team better. And I did a lot of things along the way to try to make the team better. By my senior year, not only had I become number 1 and been the team MVP for a few years, but more important, we broke the school record for wins in a season. We were 14-2 my senior year. That's amazing. We went from a team, we literally didn't have enough warm bodies to field a team. We had to forfeit spots, right? My freshman year to breaking the school record. And I think about that now when I think about leading through crisis, when I think about personal hardship and the things that just feel insurmountable sometimes. I always kind of go back to, that being the case, how shall I proceed? And what piece of this can I control? And there's actually really good data around this. So there's a great study, a psychological study. I want to say it happened in the 70s, but it's been repeated several times since then. And it's about learned helplessness. And they took 2 mice in this study. And they put sort of like shock collars on these mice. And the only difference in the 2 mice, they were in similar cages, they were similar mice of the same breed, same age, et cetera. But the only difference is one of the mice had the ability to stop the shock when it happened. These shocks happened intermittently to these poor mice. And when the shock happened, one of the mouse on the left had the ability to stop the shock by pressing his little foot on a lever. And the mouse on the right did not have the ability to stop the shock, right? And so even though they had the same amount of shock, what we found in that study with learned helplessness is that the mouse that felt like he or she had some control turned out to be a very healthy mouse. It was a mouse that, he aged normally and had a normal degree of health. The mouse on the right, however, felt like he didn't have any control over what was happening. He didn't understand when the shocking would and wouldn't happen, or had no say in how to stop it. His hair fell out, he aged dramatically, and unfortunately, he died in the course of the study. And so that was an early study about learned helplessness that showcased that if we feel like we have a degree of control on whatever the thing is, right? Like, I am not good enough to play Division I basketball, but you know what can I control? Can I control being a better tennis player? Could I control working hard? Could I control being a good teammate? Yeah, I could. And there's further studies about this. When we think about dopamine and cortisol, and there's a great book, a great author, Malcolm Gladwell. I love his podcast. I love his books, every book he's written. But he talks about this very aspect in a different way. And he says, look, like the reason we react to stress so much is because cortisol has such a bigger impact on how we feel than dopamine does. So, the cortisol is sort of the bad anxiety, stress inducing hormone we feel. And dopamine is the good one, right? The happiness. And when those interactions happen in our life, we feel the cortisol about 10 times more than we feel the dopamine. So when we think about things that are hard or hardships or stressful or anxiety inducing, it is true that we remember them more. And we have to be really intentional. If we have that data, if we know that, we can control it and say, okay, like what about that mouse, right? They endured the exact same experience, those two mice. But one of the mice thought they had a say in what the outcome was. And because of that, they were a much healthier mouse. Now, we're not mice. Life is really hard. It's beyond difficult in so many ways. But that being the case, like what can we do? What could we shape in our experience of life? I take this philosophy into my life and into the workplace frequently. Here's what I say now. We have three choices when hard things happen, right? Number one, can we just get over it? And I particularly mean this in terms of maybe like workplace or the dramatic or emotional things that happen in interpersonal relationships often. Is this something we could just get over, particularly as it relates to our ego and our self-esteem? There are a lot of things we could just let go of if we can get our ego out of the way. So number one, can you just get over it? Because there's a lot of things we can't. Number two, can you remove yourself from the situation, right? Can you remove yourself from that team, from that workplace, from that relationship? Yeah, maybe. If not, the third choice is, what's the solution? Create a solution, create a proposal, create an idea, create something, take some control of what you have left to do. Now, this impacts my life today. This philosophy and some of the hardships I've had, well beyond athletics. In fact, having only one hand, look, you guys, this is frustrating. I am a collegiate athlete and I was a 3-time MVP. So I'm ambitious, I'm goal-driven. I like to achieve. It's a big part of my personality. But here's the thing. I cannot open a bottle of wine by myself. It's very difficult. I definitely cannot use a salt or pepper grinder with one hand. And I can't even hold a fork and a knife at the same time. And that's frustrating. Like the whole world is systematically set up for me to not have a good meal. And it's real frustrating. I have a lot of pride and I do have some ego, of course, as a human, but also in terms of my achievement, right? My ability to interact with the world and conquer the world. I have some ego about that, a healthy ego. So part of public speaking is I get to travel sometimes. And I was at a conference speaking in Philadelphia. Now, the beauty of traveling the world is that I get to, taste local food. So I was at this tiny restaurant and they had these Philly cheesesteak French fries. And I was so excited to try them. It was local. I'd never been to Philadelphia. It was a great experience. And they only had salt and pepper grinders there. No salt and pepper shakers, right? Salt and pepper grinders. And I had that moment of like, my gosh, Beth, like go back to my matrix, right? Can I get over it? Can I remove myself or can I create a solution? Well, I can't get over it. I want pepper on my fries, on my Philly cheesesteak fries. Can't get over it. Number two, can I remove myself? Well, I'm now invested. My food's in front of me. I can't go to a different restaurant. Number three, create a solution, which is to ask for help. You guys, I was dying inside. I've never asked for help in public before, I think on anything, but certainly not related to having one hand. So I was like, all right, Beth, like, right, you're mature, you're working through this. Let's ask for help. So I asked the waitress, I said, excuse me, is there any way you could help me with the salt and pepper here on my fries? She kind of gave me a strange look and she walked away. She goes, I'll be right back. I was like, oh man, what's she doing? She came back and I kid you not, she set down a second set of salt and pepper grinders. Now I could have been, frustrated, distraught, embarrassed a little bit. I was a little bit embarrassed because I just wanted salt and pepper. I didn't want to have to like continue to explain what was happening here. I thought she saw that I only had one hand. I thought it was pretty evident. And I didn't want to have to explain, like, I can't do this thing. But, it was a really good moment for me, a really good learning about how do we see ourselves and how do we see others, right? And how do we think about the hardships other people have? And I think it's really helped open my heart to see the hardships other people have. I am naturally very empathetic, uh, but I do think experiences like this, and I'm sure we all have experiences where there's no way someone else, this is a really physical example of how there's no way someone else could understand all of the complexities and context they brought to that moment and the physical hurdle I had, right? But think about the emotional, and the mental, and the other hurdles people have that we can't necessarily see. I want to talk about one or two other hardships I endured with having one hand, but I also want to share a few wins with you, and how that's helped unfold in my life. So another hardship I had, I took a job a few years back and I was doing fundraising, and this was probably 9 years ago, for a very great organization. And it was very mission focused. And I worked with schools, and I worked mostly with administrators, so principals, maybe some teachers. And I remember thinking, this was about 8 or 9 years ago, I remember saying and thinking, as long as I don't have to interact with kids in the role, I'll be fine, right? And as long as I don't have to present, because the reality of having a physical difference, like missing one hand, people get really curious and they get distracted and they stare at me, especially kids. I cannot present to kids. I won't do it, right? So I had this job for 2 or 3 years. It was going really well. I got to interact with adults, superintendents and principals and teachers, and it was going really well. Like, generally, they're pretty respectful and understand why I'm there, and we had great outcomes. And then my supervisor came to me and said, Beth, hey, just, not a big deal. We're telling everyone this, but we're going to need you to do some assemblies in front of kids. We're going to need you to do 100 assemblies per year. My biggest fear in life was not only presenting, but presenting in front of kids. And now I had to do, all of a sudden, overnight, 100 assemblies per year. And I felt like crumbling. I felt like that little poor mouse with the shot collar, right? Like, I am the mouse now on the right, whose hair is falling out and who's not going to make it. And I really thought about that. Like, what piece of this can I control? At the end of the day, I could either get over it, I could remove myself, find a different job, or I could propose a solution. What I had to do is present in front of children over and over and over and over. And I was humbled every single day, because what I feared the most is actually true. Kids are curious, they're outspoken, they say random, weird things that can make people feel uncomfortable. And I felt uncomfortable almost every single day. And I dealt with it. When I talk about silver linings, what I ended up doing is getting a puppet that I wore on my missing hand. And I have a healthy ego, right? I feel like I'm intelligent and well-spoken and there for a good reason. I didn't want to wear a puppet on my hand any more than I wanted to ask for help on the salt and pepper grinders. But it is what it is. And I had to take on, I had to fight the fight I had, which I believe I've heard Dr. Deming say those words: fight the fight you have, not the fight you want, right? And the fight I had is, I had to present in front of kids, and I had to find a way to get my ego out of the way and do the very best I could. If it had not been for that, what I deemed terrible situation 8 years ago, I would not be in the situation I am today, which is here's a picture presenting in front of 1,200 people at a conference, right before COVID. And what it taught me, learning in front of kids is, first of all, it doesn't matter, right? They're going to go home and forget about it. I got to cut my teeth on a group that, didn't really, matter in terms of long-term, career. But also, I got to learn a skill that I didn't know I needed to learn, and I didn't know I wanted to learn, and the ways it would impact my life in the future, and the opportunities I would have to speak all across the country. I would not have been good at it. I would not have been capable of doing it had it not been for having to do those assemblies. I want to talk use another example about having one hand and a thing that was maybe not a win, which is amusement parks. when I got my first prosthetic hand when I was 13 years old. And I got it because I wanted to fit in, right? Middle school girl. If you know any middle schoolers in your life, know that this is a hard time of life. And I wanted to fit in more than anything. Turns out wearing a plastic arm is probably not the way to fit in. But, I thought it was. So we went up to the Shriners Hospital. My mom took me. We had several trips because we had to get fitted, and then we had to, try it out. And the first day I got it, it was in the middle of summer, and it was the Iowa State Fair, the kickoff of the Iowa State Fair. And I wore that prosthetic arm that day on the Iowa State Fair because I wanted to fit in. I wanted people to not look at me differently for a minute. And we got to the ticket window. And I don't know if you've been there or been to a similar kind of event. You could pay sort of a flat rate, and they would put a wristband on your wrist so you could ride all the rides. And I think at the Iowa State Fair at that time, 25, 30 years ago, you could pay a flat rate and you get this wristband. So I went to get the wristband. I paid my money. I stood in line trying to fit in, right? Looking cool. And I put my left hand, my normal hand, through the window. They had a glass window at this booth. And in that glass window, they had a little tiny square box that you could fit your hand in. And I put my left hand in there. And the lady said, no, I'm sorry. It can't go on your left hand. It has to go on your right hand. I said, well, I don't, right? Pepper grinder all over. I don't have a right hand. Can you? So I tried to put my right hand in. I had this big plastic prosthetic on there, and it wouldn't fit through that little square window. So the whole point of having this is to fit in, to not stand out. And now I've got a line of kids behind me, and I'm standing out. I can't get my hand through the window. So the attendant on the booth comes out of the booth. She walks around the booth, and she comes around to investigate, figure out what's going on. She eventually puts this wristband on this prosthetic device. I don't know why they had to use the right hand. When we talk about inclusion and thinking about the perspectives other people might have in life, this would have been a good case study of there's different perspectives here. Let's roll with what they need. So she put it on. I was a little embarrassed, of course, but the day proceeded. As I will say, that was the last day I ever wore that prosthetic arm. One and only, first day and last day, because it turns out I didn't really fit in that much when I had it on. To finish the story, I was riding down the giant slide at the Iowa State Fair that evening, and I got to the bottom of the slide, and I sort of smelled something that smelled a little off, like it was burnt. And I looked down, and the thumb of that hand was smoking because I had been dragging it down the giant slide. So, my lesson in all of this is, first of all, let's think about the perspectives other people bring to the table, right? The hardships people have and the emotional, heartfelt pieces people bring to the table that we cannot imagine. There's no way we could know. But second of all, trying to fit in for the sake of fitting in is not really a winning outcome, right? There's no way I was going to fit in. And it taught me at age 13, I'm not going to fit in. And so just go ahead and stand out and be who I am and deal with what I deal with. This actually played out again 2 weeks ago. I went to Tennessee for spring break, and I went to Dollywood. I was excited to go to Dollywood, right? I'd never been to Tennessee. I had this life dream of visiting every national park. So I wanted to go to the Great Smoky Mountains, and we did as a family, and it was wonderful. But we also, I don't know if you're familiar, in the mountains, they have these sort of alpine coasters, right? You ride in these little carts. I just want you to know, toddlers can ride in these carts. I have at the time, 2 weeks ago, he was 3 years old, a 3-year-old son who can ride in the cart, no problem, right? There's you're belted in, you just ride down the mountain. And I got up to the window 2 weeks ago, this is the year 2021. And she said, I'm sorry, ma'am, you're going to need to sign a waiver. And I said, what? Looking at my kids, what's wrong? What do I need to sign for them? And she said, no, I'm going to need you to sign a waiver because you're missing a hand. You don't have a hand. So we're going to need you to sign a waiver before you can ride this. Toddlers can ride this ride. Toddlers can ride this ride. And as an adult CEO female in my mid 40s, I had to sign a waiver to say that I could ride the ride. And it just went to those moments of adversity, those moments of humbling. What are the ways that I don't quite fit with the norm that this person is seeing? But I also want to share just a few victories along the way, and then we'll kind of wrap up. In my job, that is a full-time job, I deal with a lot of vendors, right? A lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people selling things, services and tools and software and everything. And I was dealing with a software company, and this was in the fall of 20. And he said, hey, here's the cool thing. They were selling a software that makes sort of an avatar. And if you know what that is, sort of like a digital image of a person's face or body. And in this case, it was their body. And he said, we have every feature you can imagine. So red hair, freckles, round, tall, short. And this was to serve all the girls we serve. So girls can make any avatar that looks like them. And his claim to fame, the gentleman who was talking about the software, was, we have an avatar that looks like everyone. We have every feature you could imagine. Well, as I've gotten older and I'm a little more pleasantly direct about the outliers of the world and the hardships people face, the differences people face, I sort of looked at that, and he said, in fact, we've made an avatar that looks like each one of you in this room. And it was our leadership team, our decision makers. And it was a full body representation of everyone except me, right? Because they did not have an avatar that had a limb difference or an amputation. And so I gently called that out. I said, oh, I appreciate it. It's really cool. I can see our girls loving this. But guess what? There's kids that also look different and have differences. And I said, to be honest, Mike, I don't see an avatar that looks like me. I see one that has, long blonde hair at the time. And he said, well, that's a great point, Beth. Let's talk more about that. I said, what about all the kids? Now there's 2 million people in the United States that have limb differences, but there's also, think about wheelchairs and port wine stains, birthmarks, different birthmarks, alopecia, all of the things, different types of scars, all of the things that might make people stand out physically in a special way. Certainly I've dealt with that for, 40 plus years. But imagine the impact it has on kids when they stand out and look different and feel different. And I know, because I've lived it, right? I've been at the attendant booth at the Iowa State Fair. I've stood out in ways I did not want to stand out. I've been at restaurants in ways that I can't get pepper. And so I have a big heart for that. And in talking with that, through that with him, he said, that's a great point. And he said, why don't you send me a picture that you think clearly showcases your difference, and we will make you an avatar. And he did. And I think, first of all, I think it's incredible. It's awesome. It's, I get a little emotional because it's the first time in my 42 years that I have seen a digital representation, a representation that's not a photograph, that actually looks like me, that to feel seen, right, as a human being. And when I think about adversity, when I think about human beings and what they carry, I think so much of it is feeling seen, right? Having other people acknowledge and know that we're seen for what we carry. It's not physical for everyone. In fact, for most people, it's probably not physical, but it's just as hard, if not harder, right? It's really difficult stuff. Now, I want to give another great example of a time, another win before I move on here. Another win is that I, in the midst of COVID, really felt like I was having tremendous mental hardship. COVID hit mid-March last year. I was leading an organization. I was leading a family of 3 children. I have a husband. I have 3 dogs. All of a sudden, I was telecommuting, kids at home, dogs everywhere, voices everywhere, things everywhere. And I'm leading an organization genuinely through crisis. We were in the middle of cookie season. Cookie season was suspended, and cookie season is not nothing. It's a big deal, right? We had like $10 million of product out in wagons and trunks and garages, and we couldn't sell them due to COVID. So it was a big deal in terms of, how do I make sure we are sustainable? How do I make sure we're leading through this, keeping people safe, but making sure the organization doesn't fold? I'm not here to talk about all the operational things we did, but what I am here to say is I was having a really hard time. Hands down, the hardest time I've ever had personally as a human being. And that is not to say like I don't in any way want to minimize the other hardships people face, like a cancer diagnosis, like losing a loved one. There are tremendously difficult things in life. I can only say I felt like I was falling apart at the seams last year in March, in April and May and June. And in June, I decided, Beth, okay, let's go back to my matrix, right? What am I going to do? These are my choices, right? Can I get over a pandemic? I don't know if I can, right? Kids everywhere, dogs everywhere, leading through a crisis. I don't know if I can just get over it. Can I remove myself? No, there's nowhere to go. There's not a coffee shop on the planet, right? There's nowhere I can go. What's the solution? What can I do? And I decided to think about what is it that makes me feel healthy and whole. And fitness is one of those things. And it had not been kind of been on the back burner. I decided to join a gym, and I joined Farrell's Kickboxing. I joined the U, which is in Urbandale on 86th and Hickman. Here's what I want to say about it. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself in life, right? Of all the things I could do, imagine like distance running, right? We don't need 2 hands for that. No, kickboxing. You have to wear gloves. And you know what happens? The gloves don't fit right. The glove on my right side flies off all the time. It doesn't fit right. And not only that, it hurts when I punch because it doesn't fit right. And because gloves are not made for me, it hurts really bad. And this is what my hand looks like after every workout. It's bruised and it hurts. And I work out every single day. So this is what I endured. So now I'm now like almost a year into this journey. And this is what happens. And it's painful. And it's also embarrassing. There are times where just like the pepper grinder, just like the amusement park, I don't quite fit in, right? There's things I can't do. I want to do them. I have a very high achievement, component of my personality, and I can't do them. And it's frustrating. But what I would say a huge win is I have instructors there, owners there, coaches there who saw in me these pieces, right? Who looked beyond, here's a person who just wants to work out, another person like coming in to darken our doors and kick our bags. And they said, here's a person who has some different types of hardships, right? And different needs. And they worked with me. And instead of doing the bands classes, right? And they said, well, here's what you could do instead. And when I attend those classes, I can tell you, many of the coaches and the people that I love there now they're very intentional about acknowledging in subtle ways, right? They don't call it out. They don't call me out. I don't have to stand in line at the Iowa State Fair booth, but they say and do things to help me fit in. And they do exercises that don't maybe require 2 hands. Now I can wear gloves. I can punch a bag all day long. But I know they go out of their way, and they've told me to make sure that they're not doing things that make me feel like I can't achieve at the same level of others. It is such a small thing, right? Instead of picking up a band and doing an exercise, maybe they'll have all of us do push-ups, right? If I'm in that class, and it's such a small thing, but the ability to see and acknowledge the hardships people carry is such a big deal. It's such a big deal to feel seen. It doesn't matter if it's an avatar. It doesn't matter if it's a kickboxing instructor saying, let's go ahead and do push-ups instead. It's such a big deal. And it's a huge win. When I go back to that philosophy of like, can you get over it? Can you remove yourself, or can you create a solution? I want to pivot just a minute to the workplace. I want to check our time to make sure we're just doing okay here. So we can get, I know we're getting short on time, so I want to wrap it up so we have time for some Q&A. This is my philosophy at work now as well. And we had an employee that came to me and said, Beth, you have this servant leadership style, and you always say, bring us our solutions, right? The solutions we have. She goes, I'm expecting my first child, and my midwife had a recommendation. I'm really nervous about welcoming my first child into the world. She was pregnant, and she said, so my midwife said, why don't you just bring your baby to work? So I'm here asking you, Beth, can I bring my baby to work with me when she's born? You guys, I don't know if any of you have children. I do. I have 3 of them. They're amazing. They're the love of my life, right? But no, right? Have you ever no, you cannot have you met a human child? You cannot bring them to work, right? This is, when I think about like Girl Scouts, people think like, oh, it's really fun. It is fun. It's also a real workplace, right? We have offices and cubicles and phones that ring and cash registers and all the normal things people have at work. And I was like, no, you cannot. Like, there's no way that could work in a workplace. But here's where I reframed, right? Like when I think about, that being the case, how shall I proceed, right? The case is I have people on my team that are nervous about having babies. They're nervous about navigating life with career and child. And I can agree. That's really hard. I'm a working mom. I can't take that lens off, right? I've had 3 children. So we really restructured and said, how do we make our decisions as an organization? And now I think about this as a human. I don't just think about the risk. We don't just think about the risk. We say, first of all, here's our new structure. Does it support our mission? Does it advance, in our case, women and girls, but whatever, wherever you work, whatever the thing, whatever you stand for as a human, does it support your mission? If so, could it be a cultural fit? Could it fit for you? Could it be scalable? Could it be affordable? Then and only then do we get to say, what about the operational pieces, right? So when we think about fitness, like, okay, well, yeah, I'd love to be fit, and yeah, that floats my boat, but I have kids and it doesn't work with daycare. I have this and it doesn't work with my time frame. Okay, well, that's operational. Like, that's a process. Guys, we can figure out processes. That's the fun part. That's the easy part. It's like figuring out what aligns with our mission. That's the big part. And now I always think about NASA, right? Apollo 13, one of the best movies ever. Gene Kranz was the guy in Mission Control in the movie. It was Ed Harris. And he said, failure is not an option. And now I use that not only at work, but in my personal life, in my own goals and aspirations, right? What would the plan need to look like? So in Apollo 13, spoiler alert, if you've not seen it, right? I think it was like right around 1970, right? If we can bring astronauts back from outer space in 1970, 50 years ago, 50 plus years ago, and they had all sorts of issues. One of the big issues is that they had some like square filter and a round hole. They had a lot of issues. If we can get them back to Earth safely, we can figure out operational things like how to have babies at work, or how to get a fitness, a regimen into our lives, right? We can figure that stuff out. That's the process stuff. So the question is not should we or shouldn't we? If it aligns with our mission in life, if it aligns with our mission at work, yeah, we probably should. So the question is, what if I said we had to? It takes off the handcuffs of thinking about all the risk. And the question is, what if I said we had to do it? What would the plan need to look like? In our case, we did create a program for infants at work. It's a 10-page document, and it outlines who can hold babies, where they can hold them, how long they can cry, all the things. It was incredible. It has been nothing short of impactful. We've been doing it for 2.5 years. We just graduated baby number 13, and it absolutely transformed our organization and transformed my leadership style, transformed everything. I got to speak all over the country about it. I got a call. We rolled it out in January of 19. I got a call in March from the National Academy of Sciences. This committee was headed by Dr. Mae Jameson, the astronaut. And they said, are you Beth Shelton, CEO of Girl Scouts Greater Iowa? Yeah. We'd like you to come speak, in Washington, D.C. And I said, well, thank you. It's so exciting. But we have, like Girl Scouts, the National Girl Scouts of the USA is in New York City. I think that's who you mean. And they said, no. You're the one doing the babies at work. We want to talk to you. We want you to come here and talk about removing barriers for women. And I sat on that panel, and I will finish with this story. I sat on that panel, and someone from the audience, I was on my soapbox, y'all. I was talking about infants at work, supporting caregivers, so supporting parents, supporting babies, supporting women in the workplace, all the things that we stand for as an organization, right? And I was like, this is a big deal. We offer 12 weeks of paid parental leave. I'm like, there's no excuses. Here's why we need to do it. Here's why we do it. And someone from the audience said, yeah, it seems like you're doing a lot for parents. That's great. That's a big barrier, for a lot of people and a lot of women. What are you doing for caregivers? She said, what are you doing for people that are providing the acute physical or mental care of a loved one? Someone with a cancer diagnosis, someone who is ill, someone who got in an accident, someone who has an adult child with a disability. What are you doing for them? And I did that thing we do at conferences. It's a panel. We have one microphone between us. I handed it to the lady next to me, like, you answer that. And she's like, no, you answer it. Like, none of us wanted to answer the question, right? Because we weren't really doing anything extra. We were doing a lot for new parents. We were doing a lot for our people. And we had a lot of PTO. But that really wasn't what she was asking. She was saying, how are you seeing people for what they carry, the burdens they carry if they're caregivers? This was 2 years ago, well before COVID. And it really opened my eyes to say, what could we be doing for caregivers? And we wrote and created our own policy. It's called paid caregiver leave. Every employee here is eligible the day they start. You don't have to earn it with an arbitrary duration, arbitrary number of days, right? The day you start, you are eligible. We see you. And it's 4 weeks of additional paid time off for the acute physical, mental, or physical care of a loved one or oneself. So any accident, any diagnosis, any injury, you don't have to use your PTO, right? Imagine if your employer said, hey, we see you. We recognize this is probably a really hard thing, whatever your thing is. It's a really hard thing and we've got your back and we're going to pay you and go take your time. And when you come back, we're here for you. Imagine if that was how we all acted, right? At work, and with our peers and in our friendships and our relationships. I'll finish with our data. The business case for being good to people is so compelling. I know we're out of time, so I don't have time to go through all of it. I will say it has been transformative in 5 years for our organization, for our outcomes, for our metrics, for our people, for our brand. We just quite simply are trying to be good to people. We have had a transition of leadership, and it's to the people. What is best for the people? And I had to learn that lesson at 18, at 13, at 18, at the Iowa State Fair, at my high school basketball team. And I got to bring that into the great privilege of leading people in an organization. And I try every day to say, how do we make this the very best for you? And it's just been a really distinct pleasure. And I would say that my life has not been short on hardships. It's been a beautiful life, a blessed life, but not short on hardships. And I'm not 6'3". I will never slam dunk a basketball. I will never play basketball for Drake. I can fangirl over what Drake does. I've gotten to meet their coaches. I've gotten to meet Jan Jensen. I just met her last week for a one-on-one, and it floated my boat more than anything I could have imagined. I will never have two hands. I will never be able to grind my own pepper. I will never be able to predict the future in terms of pandemics or not, and selling all the cookies we have or not. But at the end of the day, I get to make lemonades out of it, right? As the CEO of Girl Scouts, and I love to show this picture of what it looks like. We have 30 warehouses during the cookie program. Here's a picture of one. And lemonades go all the way to the ceiling. I would not have the job I'm in if it hadn't been for learning this lesson the hard way over and over again. So thank you for the privilege. I do want to stop sharing my screen so we have a little bit of time for Q&A.
Hey, Beth, thank you so much. That was great. You know, there's so many themes that resonate with me and with those of us, those in the room with the cancer. A couple of themes. So one is this this dichotomy of wanting to fit in, but yet wanting to be seen. So there were times where, you know, you didn't want to be standing out. You wanted to be just part of the crowd and not be different. But then there are other times where, you know, I am proud of my uniqueness, and whether it's an avatar that looks like me or being at the gym. And individuals that go through cancer often experience that too. Part of it is body image, you know, whether it is losing a body part to cancer, whether it's a breast or an arm, whether it's losing your hair, whether it's having a distinct look that clearly indicates to most of the world that you're going through some medical problem. So talk a little bit about that dichotomy, the paradox of wanting to fit in sometimes and just, you know, be unnoticed, and other times want to proudly be noticed for the difficulty that you have gone through and how that defines your character.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, I don't presume to know what a cancer survivor or caregiver feels. So my challenges are different, but what I can say for me is it's sort of that feeling, I think, at the root of being othered, right? There's a way that we get othered, you know, emotionally or physically. Like people presume that if I have to ask for help, my perception, if I have to ask for help with a salt or pepper shaker, that I'm sort of weaker or less than, or if I have to stand in front of a room of elementary children giving an assembly, right? They're curious because I look different and I'm othered. And I think the notion of fitting in is that, or being seen, is that I don't think I crave to be seen for being different. I crave to be seen the same way others are, right? I don't want to be othered because of my physical difference. I want people to see who I am as a human being and what I bring to the table with my heart, with my empathy, with my intellect, and not because I have a physical difference. So when I think about the dichotomy of both, it's like, yes, I want to be seen, but I want to be seen as a human being with unique attributes and different qualities and what I bring, but not because I don't want to be othered and set apart because there's something physically that people see about me, and they maybe tell themselves a story, or react in a way that I tell myself a story.
Yeah, the last thing, this will be the last question before we wrap it up, and it's sort of the role is resilience. So let me just tell you a little bit and my thought about this. So obviously nobody's going to have a flat life, and a flat life would be pretty boring if you wanted it. It's really these ups and downs and bumps in the road of life that teach us what we're all about. And I would say that having been a cancer doctor for 40 years, that, you know, when someone faces a challenge that they didn't ask for, and they're able to, with support, to get through this difficult time. You know, everybody hears about post-traumatic stress, that you can't deal with the stress and you then can't deal with normal stress. But there's this opposite and probably more powerful and more common post-traumatic growth, that when you get over a difficulty, get through a difficulty with the help of others, you know, cancer maybe didn't give you the strength, but it allowed you to find strength that was already there. And recognizing the strength that you find in yourself, that gives you the confidence to take on the next bump in the road of life. And so the question is really about, how do you see resilience, and where and when did you think that you gained this understanding that, give me another bump, give me another lemon, and I'll make you a pitcher of lemonade?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I think resilience it's one of those things we have to earn, right? Like we earn it truly by being um, in the hardship and facing the hurdles. And we most often don't choose that. We don't want to be, but it truly is earned sort of one moment at a time, one difficult moment at a time. When I think about 2020 and leading an organization and dealing with being a parent with children who are at home and you know, all the things that felt impossible. I remember there was a day and I was on my kitchen floor and I was crying and I was saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't lead. I can't do this. I have a toddler, I have a high schooler. I'm trying to lead us through crisis. I cannot do this. And it was like March 28th of 2020. It was like 2 weeks into the pandemic. Guess what? I can do it. I did do it. It was hard. It was hard for a lot of people. I can do it. But I remember saying 2020 at some point early on, I said, this is kind of whiny, right? This is the worst year to be a CEO. This is the worst year to lead. It's impossible. I have decision fatigue every day. I had to make decisions where there was no right answer for anyone. And it was just shooting into the blind, right? Trying to use my own, knowledge and experience to make these decisions and use my team. And now I look at it, a little bit of hindsight. It was the best year to be a CEO. When I got the gift of learning. I got the gift of sharpening those tools, that I'll have those tools forever. Like, yes, it was hard. Yes, I was a puddle on my kitchen floor in March last year. Yes, I was, but here I am now. And I guess the last thing I would say is, I see this all the time in Girl Scouts, and I see it in a really physical way. We have camps and we have zip lines and all these things. And I took my troop, I'm now a troop leader, and I took my troop to one of our camps, and we have this zip line course. It's an obstacle course. It's 40 feet in the air. And I was like, hey, they were all afraid to do it. I was afraid too. I hadn't done it before. Climbed up this pole to get to the top. And I said, well, I'll do it first. Yeah, Miss Beth, you do it first. And I got up there. I know it sounds probably crazy, but sometimes I sort of forget that I have a difference and a disability that will and sometimes impair me, right? Because I learned a lot of things in life, that I can do anything. And I got to the top of that first pole, and there's 2 carabiners you have to keep clipped 40 feet in the air. And then you have to use your hands, a lot of dexterity, to unclip this one, clip this one. So you're always hooked to a wire. And it takes 2 hands pretty much. And I got to the top of that first pole. My whole troop was on the ground, and they were like, come on, Miss Beth, come on, Miss Beth. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think this through. very well, like now I don't know what I'm going to do. And I had like a full blown panic attack. I'd never had one before. I'm at the top 40 feet in the air. I'm, trying to hold to this pole. And I got through it. And the troop was on the ground saying, "You've got it, you've got it." And I was slow. It had to be painful to watch. It was probably 40 minutes of me struggling through this to get through this course. There's only one way down. Once you get up, there's only one way down. Get through the course and zip line to the bottom. But what's interesting is almost every girl in the troop went up. They did the same thing. They got panicked. They did it. They were scared. They were in tears sometimes on that first pole, much like I was. But then they got to the zip line at the end and they were smiling. And I think about that muscle of resilience, that muscle of grit, of courage. Like, you only get stronger by going through the obstacle course. And for all of us, life is the obstacle course. That's a really physical analogy that I get the gift of seeing and leading every day, but it's so true. And it's a beautiful thing. And we have to kind of have those hardships to get to soar.
Yep. Yep. And it is just a great example that what we're all going through, and what a source, these obstacles, whether it's COVID or a physical obstacle, it's a source of creativity and ingenuity. It makes us think differently, and out of that comes all sorts of wonderful things. And part of that is this talk that you've given to us. And so I really thank you for sharing with us a pitcher of lemonade.
Yes,
And,
thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really honored to be here.
And if anybody wants to zip on over to the Mercy Health and Fitness Center right now, you can join us for spin class. We're going to go up and do some pedaling and do some sweating and do some singing. And please come and join us again next week. And I'm going to turn it back over to Chris Goodale, and Chris is going to take us out. Thank you.
Beth, thank you very much. Inspiring words indeed. This has been recorded this evening, and like all of our Cancer Education Series recordings, they are on the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel, as well as the MercyOne website. If you search that website for a Cancer Education Series, you'll see all the recordings that we've done throughout the past year. So, Beth, thank you very much for being part of the Cancer Education Series tonight. Dr. Deming, good luck with your indoor cycling class, and happy Founders Day, everybody. We'll see you next week.